It was the coldest night of the year, and the wind cut through the narrow alleys of the city like a blade. Streetlights flickered above, casting shaky shadows on the cracked sidewalks below. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, and then fell silent again. The city kept moving, heartless and unaware, as if it had forgotten about the people at its edges. But in a corner of that city, huddled beneath the tattered awning of a closed-down bakery, a young woman named Mary Sullivan sat holding her baby girl close to her chest, trying desperately to keep her warm. The baby's name was Emma. She was just over a year old, small and fragile, with cheeks that had once been full but were now pale and drawn from illness. She whimpered softly in her sleep, her tiny breaths coming too shallow, too fast. Mary wrapped her thin coat tighter around the both of them, but the fabric was damp and her fingers were already numb. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Emma had barely taken in anything except water. The fever had started 3 nights ago and hadn't broken since. The cheap medicine she had bought with her last few coins had done nothing. Emma was getting worse. Mary rocked her gently, trying to soothe her, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "Shh, baby, Mama's here. Mama's got you. I won't let anything happen to you." But her voice trembled with fear, because deep down, she knew she was running out of time. A year ago, her life had looked different. She hadn't been rich, but there had been a roof over her head, a job at the laundry, a husband who promised things would get better. But James had changed after the factory closed. Work was hard to find, and he had started drinking. First, it was occasional. Then, it was every day. Then the anger came, sharp, mean, and loud. Mary had taken the blows in silence, telling herself it was just a phase, that he was just under pressure. But when he raised his hand with Emma in the same room, something broke inside her. She had packed a bag and left in the middle of the night, carrying Emma against her chest. She'd had a few dollars, a change of clothes, and the belief that she could survive. That belief had gotten her this far, but it was fading. The shelters were full. The hospitals wouldn't treat Emma without money. And now, as her baby whimpered again in pain, Mary felt the crushing weight of desperation pressing down on her. She would do anything, even the unthinkable. She looked around the dim street, eyes searching. There were bars a few blocks away. Places where men went to drink and forget. Places where women went when they had nothing left to give but themselves. Mary had never imagined herself stepping into one of those places. But what did it matter now? Her pride wasn't worth her daughter's life. Her heart pounded as she stood up, carefully wrapping Emma in the only blanket she had. She walked slowly, toward the noise and neon of the city's darker corners, every step heavy with dread. Inside her, a voice screamed that this was wrong, but another voice, louder, whispered, "She's all you have, and if you don't do this, you'll lose her." The first bar turned her away. The second one didn't. A man behind the counter eyed her up and down, not kindly, not cruelly, just like she was another number on a list. She explained what she needed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want anything for myself. Just money for my baby's medicine. Just enough to get her help." He didn't ask questions. He nodded to a back room. "Room's clean. Don't cause trouble." Mary stood frozen for a moment, her stomach twisting in knots. She handed Emma's blanket to the bartender. "Please, just hold her for a minute. Keep her warm." She stepped inside that room, her hands shaking. And at that moment, a part of her died. Not because of what she was about to do, but because it had come to this. Because this world, the same world that had once celebrated her as a new mother, was now the same world that had turned its back on her completely. But fate is strange. And sometimes, just when all hope seems lost, something unexpected happens. Knock came at the bar door, firm, rhythmic, the kind that made people stop and look up. The bartender frowned and walked over. A man in a long coat stood there, soaked from the rain, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on the tiny bundle in the bartender's arms. "What's going on here?" the man asked, his voice calm but firm. "She's not in trouble," the bartender muttered. Just another one looking to make a quick buck. The man stepped inside without asking. He walked past the stairs in the stale smell of beer and tobacco. He looked down at the baby, her lips pale, her forehead burning hot, and something shifted in his expression. "Where's her mother?" The bartender jerked a thumb toward the back. In that moment, everything changed, because the man wasn't just any passerby. He was a doctor, one who had once lost a child of his own. And what he saw in that baby's face was something he hadn't seen in years, a chance to save a life when it still mattered. Mary emerged from the room seconds later, her face streaked with tears, her soul hollowed out. She expected judgment. She expected shame. But instead, she found a stranger holding her baby like she was the most precious thing in the world. "You don't have to do this," the man said quietly. Mary looked at him, not understanding. "Do what?" He handed her Emma. "Whatever you think is the only way, there's another way." She clutched Emma close, her mind spinning. "You don't know what I've done, what I was about to do." "I don't need to know," he said. "All I see is a mother who hasn't given up. That's more than most people can say. But life isn't a fairy tale. Help always comes with its own price. And sometimes, even kindness can carry hidden strings." Mary followed the man out into the rain, still unsure if she had just been saved, or if she had walked into a different kind of trap. She didn't know his name. She didn't know why he had helped her. And she didn't know that everything in her life was about to become even more complicated, because the past never stays buried. And the people we run from have a way of finding us again. And as they disappeared into the shadows of the city, a figure watched them from across the street. Someone who knew Mary. Someone who hadn't forgotten. The wind picked up, and the rain fell harder. Somewhere in the night a siren wailed. But inside Mary's heart, for the first time in days, there was a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. But how long would it last? Only time would tell. The night was still heavy with rain as Mary walked beside the man who had stepped into her life like some strange miracle. He hadn't said much since they left the bar, just walked with a steady pace, glancing now and then at the baby in Mary's arms as if to check she was still breathing. Mary held Emma tighter with every step, unsure of where they were going, or what to expect, but she knew one thing: wherever they were headed had to be better than where they came from. They reached a small, older building tucked between a pawn shop and a laundromat. The sign above was faded: Whitmore Clinic. The man unlocked the door and motioned for Mary to come inside. She hesitated for a moment, but Emma whimpered again, her fever rising, and Mary didn't have room left for fear. She stepped in. The clinic was quiet, dimly lit, but warm. The man flicked on a light in the hallway and led them to a small exam room. There were posters on the wall with simple health tips, a worn chair in the corner, and a cabinet full of supplies. He took Emma from Mary's arms gently, his hands steady. "What's your name?" he asked while laying the baby on the table. "Mary," she said softly. "Mary Sullivan." He nodded. "I'm Dr. Thomas Whitmore." He didn't ask questions about what she was doing at that bar, or why she was alone in the middle of the night. He simply worked, checking Emma's breathing, taking her temperature, feeling her pulse. His expression was calm, but Mary could tell by the tension in his jaw that he was worried. "She's fighting a bad infection," he said finally. "We'll need antibiotics, fluids, and rest. But she's strong. She's still fighting. That means there's hope." Those words hit Mary harder than anything. There's hope. No one had said that to her in months, not since she'd left James. Not since the shelters had turned her away. Not since she'd begged outside the hospital and been ignored. She sat in the corner chair watching him work, her heart slowly beginning to thaw. Emma stayed at the clinic overnight. Dr. Whitmore gave her medicine and stayed awake with her while Mary finally slept for a few hours curled up in a blanket on the floor. By morning, the fever had broken just a little, and Emma was breathing easier. Mary couldn't stop the tears that spilled from her eyes. She hadn't cried in so long, not like that, not from relief. Dr. Whitmore brought her tea and a sandwich and still didn't ask for anything in return. Instead, he sat across from her and asked, "Where's her father?" Mary hesitated. Then she told the truth. About James, about the fear, about the night she ran. She kept her voice low and steady, but her fingers gripped the cup tightly as she spoke. "He said we were holding him back," she finished. "That he didn't want this life. He left us, and I haven't seen him since." Dr. Whitmore didn't look shocked. "Just sad. I lost someone once too," he said after a pause. "My wife. We were trying for a child. Never happened. Then I lost her. I closed this place down for months. Thought I was done helping people. Until I saw your baby. Something changed." Mary didn't know what to say to that. But for the first time, she felt like someone really saw her, not just the struggle, but the woman beneath it, the mother who had given up everything just to save her child. Over the next few days, Emma slowly began to recover. Mary stayed at the clinic, helping out, cleaning up, doing little tasks to feel useful. Dr. Whitmore, Thomas, told her she could stay until she figured things out. It felt too generous. But she had no other place to go. But outside that little clinic, the world kept turning. And not everyone had forgotten Mary Sullivan. James returned to the city 2 weeks later. He had run out of money in California, and the promises he'd been chasing there had disappeared. He came back looking for his girls, not out of love, but because someone had told him Mary might be with a doctor now. That maybe she'd gotten herself something valuable. And he wanted in. He started asking around, spinning stories about a poor, confused wife who had taken his daughter and run off. Most people ignored him. But one night, in a bar not far from where Mary had been, he met someone who remembered her, remembered the baby, remembered the man who had taken them away. Dr. Whitmore. James grinned. He had a name now. Back at the clinic, life was beginning to feel almost normal. Emma was laughing again, eating, crawling around the exam rooms like they were her personal playground. Mary had started helping with patients, answering phones, organizing supplies. She felt needed again. She felt whole, and she had started to feel something else too, something she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. Around Thomas, she felt safe. She felt seen. There were moments when their hands brushed and she felt her heart race. When he smiled at her across the room, and she had to look away, but she told herself it wasn't real. She had been broken too long to believe in things like love again, but Thomas saw it. He saw the way Mary would reach out instinctively to comfort someone else. The way she stayed up with Emma when she had another small fever, never once complaining. He saw her strength, even when she didn't. One evening, as they stood watching Emma play, he said quietly, "You don't have to keep running anymore, Mary. You're not alone." And just like that, she knew she wasn't. But the past doesn't disappear just because we want it to. James showed up a week later. He waited until Thomas left for supplies. Then he walked through the front door of the clinic like he owned the place. Mary froze when she saw him. He looked thinner, more worn out, but the smirk was the same. That same cruel smile. "Hello, sweetheart," he said. "Miss me?" Emma cried the moment she heard his voice. Mary backed away, clutching her daughter. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice shaking. James laughed. "What do you think?" "You ran off with my kid, Mary. My blood. That's not something you get to decide on your own." "She's not yours," Mary snapped. "You gave her up. You left us." He took a step forward. "Doesn't matter. She's still mine in the eyes of the law. Unless you want a custody fight, I suggest we make a deal." Mary's mind raced. She had nothing, no proof, no money, just fear. And Emma. James leaned in. "You got yourself a nice little setup here. A doctor, a warm place, maybe even a future. I want in. Give me some cash and I walk away. You keep the kid. You keep your fantasy." Mary's breath caught. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Before she could respond, the door opened, and Thomas stepped in. He saw the scene in an instant. Mary's pale face, Emma's tears, James's twisted smile. He stepped between them. "You need to leave," Thomas said calmly, but there was steel in his voice. James sneered. "And who are you? Her new man?" "I'm the one who's here now. The one who stayed." James stepped forward like he might say more, but then he saw something in Thomas's eyes that made him stop. Something dangerous. Something protective. "You haven't seen the last of me," James muttered, and walked out. But they all knew that was a lie. He wasn't done. Mary felt her knees give out, and Thomas caught her before she hit the floor. She sobbed into his chest, her whole body shaking. "He's going to try and take her," she whispered. "I know it." Thomas held her tighter. "Not if I can help it. Not ever again." And in that moment, they knew something had to change. There was only one way to protect Emma, one way to keep their fragile, precious world from being torn apart. They would have to fight, and as they stood there, holding on to each other, the storm outside began to rise. The real battle was just beginning. The days that followed were tense, like a thick fog pressing down on Mary's chest. James hadn't disappeared, far from it. He prowled the neighborhood, asking questions, making thinly veiled threats. Every time Mary stepped outside, she felt eyes watching her. Every phone call or knock at the door sent her heart racing. Thomas did everything he could to keep them safe. He hired a lawyer who moved quickly to file the proper adoption paperwork and protect Mary and Emma's rights. But legal battles were slow, and James knew how to stretch things out, hoping to wear Mary down, to make her give up. One night, as Mary and Thomas sat quietly in the living room with Emma asleep upstairs, there was a loud banging on the door. Mary's breath hitched. Thomas moved to the window, peering out into the dark street. "Who is it?" Mary whispered. A gruff voice answered, "Police. We need to speak with Miss Sullivan." Mary's stomach dropped. "The police? What now?" Thomas opened the door carefully. Two officers stood there, serious faces in the dim porch light. "Ma'am, we have a warrant to search the premises. We received a report about a custody dispute involving your daughter." Mary's hands trembled. It was the beginning of the fight she feared, a fight that would decide Emma's future. The next hours blurred. Questions, interviews, paperwork. The court ordered temporary custody hearings. Mary felt pulled apart, torn between fear and hope. But something inside her refused to break. When the final hearing came, the courtroom was packed. James sat across the room, smug, while Mary clutched Thomas's hand tightly. The judge listened to both sides, weighing evidence, hearing stories of abandonment, neglect, and, most importantly, the love Mary and Thomas had shown Emma. The turning point came when Mary's lawyer presented letters from neighbors, doctors, and teachers, proof of Mary's dedication and the safe, loving environment Emma now had. Thomas spoke gently about the nights Emma was sick and the days they had watched her grow strong. James had nothing but anger and bitterness. His threats fell flat. In a quiet, firm voice, the judge made the ruling that changed everything. Mary and Thomas were granted full custody of Emma. The adoption was finalized. James's rights were permanently terminated. Tears streamed down Mary's face. Relief washed over her like a wave. She looked at Thomas, her heart full. Outside the courthouse, the rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting golden light on the streets. For the first time in a long time, Mary felt free. Free to love her daughter without fear. Free to build the family she had dreamed of. Emma laughed as Thomas spun her around in the park, her tiny hands reaching for the sky. Mary watched them, knowing that love, real love, had saved them all. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest hope. Sometimes a mother's strength can move mountains. And sometimes, when you feel like you have nothing left to give, life surprises you with kindness, courage, and a chance to start over. Mary had sold herself in desperation once, but she had bought a future worth fighting for, and that future was hers to keep.